This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
Well, an exceptionally busy night last night at City Council, and first I will say again, as I did yesterday, I was wrong. Somehow I missed last night's meeting on the calendar and thought we had a bit of a break. Next week is the break. Sorry for leading you astray on that one. A lot was covered last night, an awful lot. The James Whalen came back for ratification and discussion. The MAT tax is going up for visitors. Some bad debt were covered. Safety seems to be an issue at the city, and the City Council Composition Committee brought reports forward, and that was an interesting one. We'll end with that. Start time last night, 6:42. Attendance had a full house again, with only the mayor being away as he continues his world tour somewhere. Technically, the voices still don't match the video, but I know that they're working on it. It's just one of those things. It was perfect a couple of weeks ago, but at least we got to hear it, so we watched. Only one criticism this week, and I will start with this and try to be kind. Councillor Zacino was the acting mayor last night. He was also the chair of a couple of different parts of the meeting. Can we not make our meetings sound like we're at a shag at the Elks Hall in 1996, Councillor? Councillor Hamilton, you're up. I see a motion carried. I don't know why we do that in the commentary, and attempts at humor are not part of the decorum in the chambers. Take some notes from Councillor Folds. He knows how to chair a meeting. Trust me, I get what it feels like to have a microphone booming into a room full of people, sir, but unless you're applying for a job here in the near future, there's no need for dramatic effect while you're chairing a meeting. Let's clean that up a little. So away we go. Anyway, first up, a quick one that's more for public interest. Remember that motion passed by Councillor Chung a couple months ago, when she asked city administration if we could be buried with our pets? Yeah, the city cemetery rules came into play. She asked for a report. Remember that? Can we bury our pets with this bylaw? And what if the dog goes before I do? I don't know. It's confusing. It came back to council last night, and it was deferred to December 16th. The meeting started with the Citizens of Outstanding Achievement Awards presented, and many individuals, organizations were on hand to accept these awards. There's a great list on the city website of who got them last night. Some fantastic people, outstanding people that are doing great work in our community. Thank you for everything you do, and they were rightfully recognized. One thing that kind of flew under the radar last night following a presentation from the HR department was the city manager bylaw. Human Resources recommending that a new bylaw be adapted for council and that the current one be repealed so that it's updated and standardizes the duties and responsibilities of the city manager. In essence, it's given him a little bit more power. It's not a huge change, but the city manager doesn't need new sweeping rules. He's already making some changes. But following the HR presentation, there was no discussion on it. It was just simply passed. There were some tax arrears brought forward last night, including a big one through some legal speak. These are properties in arrears that are now up for tax sales. The city now owns them. Over $845,000 was owed to the city for the former Oddfellows building on May Street, just across from City Hall. Arrears and the demolishing of this is going to cost the city about $600,000. Not to worry, though. Most of that will be recouped when they tear it down and have that land open for sale. That was all cleaned up. Next up, everyone's favorite way to make some passive revenue that's not on the backs of citizens for a change. It's the MAT tax. This has been in play for about 6 years. It's placed on hotel room nights. Every time somebody stays at a hotel, we collect a little bit of money. $12.2 million has been collected, and that goes to the CEDC, which in turn gives it to the tourism department to share. Now, don't get me started on the tourism department. It just causes me some trouble. But $12 million is a lot collected from visitors. No matter where you go for your vacation or work, you pay some kind of tax wherever you visit. Most of us don't even notice it on our hotel bill, but it's there. Currently, visitors pay about 4% tax to stay here. Administration brought a plan to raise that to 5%. Thunder Bay Hotel Association, the CEDC, and the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce support the rate increase. The estimated annual revenue, $750,000 more into our pockets. That's not coming out of yours, but where does it go? Well, some of the projects were shown last night that are using the city MAT funds, things like the North Shore Steelhead Fish Ladder, and the cruise ship docks, and the conservatory, and the Canada Games Complex scoreboard, and the Chippewa amusement rides, and the indoor turf facility. All of these services see a lot of tourists, except for one of those, The MATAC supports and is committed to funding for the indoor turf facility. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. I guess the idea is that thousands of people are going to flock to the community and play in a $52 million turf. For some reason, I don't see that happening, but the tourism money is going there. To me, that's about as valuable as tourism dollars being spent on young social media influencers that they foot the bill for. Yeah, there's those every year. Tourism claims it makes us money. I have some trouble with the math, but the big part of this MAT tax is the fact that we're collecting nothing from Airbnbs. That was a big topic last night. There's a bunch of them in town. Turns out the city has missed out on $1 million in revenue in short-term rentals in the last 6 years. How do we get that money? Well, we can't, because it's virtually unenforceable, as many of these short-term rentals are completely under the table. There are not many tools to collect the funds. Ontario is looking at a provincial law to help municipalities collect. There's also third-party auditors that will collect the money for you, but chasing it down is hard, and the cost to do that may outweigh the amount collected. Administration is on top of it. Up next, a new one to me, the first report of the Boulevard Garden and Maintenance Bylaw report. It's an entire report on what you can and can't plant on your boulevard. You got to register, and then it comes with an agreement of what you can and can't do with some rules. It's the first report to council on this. It has a ways to go. 2 feet max is the highest flower that you can plant. That means you can't plant a tree or even a sunflower. It's an interesting program, especially since we have trouble with some people just cutting the lawn on their boulevard near their houses. This will clean things up and add something to the streetscapes with all kinds of benefits. The team did a lot of work on this, and there's a little bit of a learning curve for the city, especially when people want to start planting on their boulevards. They'll need to register to do so. My question is, who's in charge of the stump from the 50-year-old tree in front of my house that was cut down 4 years ago? The stump's still there, and it's killing all the grass around it. When I plant a garden, can I tell the snowplow operator not to put a 6-foot snowbank of salt filled on top of it? A lot of questions still need to be answered through the process. Do our bylaws have the time to measure the plants and check their height? It's a work in progress. It's a good program. It's a lot of work. It passed, and the next discussion on that will be in October. Next, the city has a safety mid-year update. That's the report that tells us how are we doing as far as safety for our employees. Human Resources provided an overview of safety-related incidents for the period of January to June 2024 for information only. We're heading towards 100 lost time accidents per year. We have 50 of them already in the first 6 months. No comments from admin and only one from council makes you kind of wonder if the city employees are safe. You would think this is a higher priority as the city pays millions of dollars in WSIB claims every year. Is it a sign that maybe the city is not a safe place to work? I think it is, but it needs some work. City employees would be the best to answer that. It's something to certainly keep an eye on. Everyone deserves to work in a safe environment where their employer has their back. Do we? Keep watching this space. A lot of people in attendance last night from the Transportation Museum as the ratification decision for the James Whalen tongue was brought forward. After last week's roundup, I don't have to remind you the complications of all of this and how many of times the city has dropped the ball on this one. City manager said it best last night. It's time to move forward on this. If it were up to me, we would have just handed the boat to the Transportation Museum years ago. They're the experts, and we know how they'll take care of it, but that's too complicated. So it was up for ratification last night. And last week's decision was changed, sort of. An amendment was brought forward that saw the price tag for the recycling changing from $500,000 to $300,000, just a little under. It'll be dismantled and some pieces picked, and then there's some new options. They're not necessarily spending money on a place for this thing to sit. They paused that part for more discussions with stakeholders, i.e. the Transportation Museum that seems to know best. Why this is hard to hand off to them, I don't know. It's beyond my expertise and knowledge, but there are way too many delays already on this project, so let's just move it forward. It was approved last night unanimously. All right, the next part that made many, many people in the room nervous. They will deny the fact that they were nervous about this, but council composition is a big deal. 13 councillors right now, including one mayor. It was brought forward a couple of years ago that maybe we should relook at this. So the Council Composition Review Committee was there last night to give their report. And look who is back. Former Councillor Rebecca Johnson. She's the chair of the Council Composition Committee. And what a joy it was to have her back in chambers. Her knowledge on the topic along with the background information and legalese that was supplied by the city clerk, perfectly outlined what's to come. Changes to the makeup of council are long overdue. Rebecca Johnson is the right person to lead this charge. On top of that, it reminded me how much she's missed in Chambers. We will have the former councillor on the air with us next week to talk about this. It's important, and you need to be involved in this because it's a big, big deal. On a personal note, Rebecca, thank you for your continuing to genuinely serve the community after so many years and from stepping down from council. You don't have to, but you do it because you want to make a difference. A lot in that room can learn from you. Thank you for your service. So quickly, we won't get into the nitty-gritty of all this, but it really comes down to a couple of things. There was an engagement summary done, a survey done, 659 people filled it out. It was based on the structure of council, how many at-large members, or how many ward boundaries, who does what, will it be full-time or part-time, how much do they get paid? They did a pile of work. A pile of work. The key points were the ward boundaries. They should be more balanced. The income, education, labor, housing, industrial, and commercial growth potential in each ward should be equal. And that's what they did. And that's the work that they did. More public engagement comes in October. But there were some concerns with all this, too. A debate on reducing the number of at-large councillors to avoid popularity contests. That made some councillors nervous for obvious reason. One of the things that came forward the biggest thing that came forward was the two recommendations from this committee, which has to do with option 1 and option 2 of the new makeup of city council. These are just options. They are not the firm recommendations, but there were two presented last night. The first one was an 11-member council, down two, only saving us about $65,000, $70,000 a year, but it would be a 4-ward system, with 2 councillors elected for each ward. So 4 wards going west to east, 2 per ward, and 2 councillors at large, and of course, 1 mayor. The boundaries for these wards are interesting. It's a fascinating project and an enormous amount of work. Arthur Street is a boundary. Oliver John is a boundary. River to Junot is a boundary. It's all balanced by population, income, education, labor, number of houses. All of the wards touch the water at some point. All of the wards have industrial and commercial, and all of the wards have room for growth. To me, this makes the most amount of sense. 4 wards with 2 councillors in each. Well, that got the attention of council, of course. Many of them worried about the workload. Many of them worried about what happens if 2 people get voted in a ward and then 2 at-large councillors come from the same ward and the mayor too. Oh, the humanity. That's how elections work. You pick the best people for the job. One of the things that kept coming up is having 2 councillors per ward that may cause trouble. Seems like councillors don't want to work together, especially with somebody in their own ward. So why not share the job? Lessen the workload per ward. The committee will come back with a new recommendation in the coming months. It is a very big deal, and it's one that you need to be involved in. This is going to shape the future of our city. These people that have been on council for decades need to go. And this is the best way to find the best people for the job. It is an amazing amount of work and data that this committee and the city clerk put into this. It's worth paying attention to. But if I was to make a prediction, judging by some of the commentary last night from some of the veteran councillors, they're not going to accept any of this. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. But the enormous amount of work put into this by the committee will be lost. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. The veterans in the room are threatened by this. The increased competition to spread votes over 4 wards is scary for them. I hope they accept the change, but I got a feeling they're not going to. Councillor Johnson will join us sometime next week to get into this because the public consultations continue, and it's a chance for you to speak up to it. It's time for a change. The community is different. Our needs are different. Our people are different. And it's all very different than it was 40 years ago when our current council was made up in the way that it is now in a hybrid system. Like with many things with this group, we're stuck in the past. It's time to move forward, and this is a huge first step. I hope they take it. Meeting was done at 9:35 and adjourned. And now for sure, the next meeting is coming on October the 7th.